Somewhere between Park for May and the debrief, a quiet doubt crept in. In Austin, Oscar Piastri wrestled the McLaren that wouldn't answer back, while Lando Norris stalked Max Verstappen to the flag. Same garage, same updates, very different Sundays. And that's where a title fight starts to bend. McLaren swear equal treatment. The paddock whispers about soft bias. Sabotage? There's no evidence. But perception can be corrosive, and Piastri fell short on tools the moment he needed them most. If you love F1 without the noise, hit subscribe and let's get into it. Verstappen won the United States GP. Norris finished P2, Piastri was P5. The 8-point swing means Piastri's lead over Norris shrank to 14, 346 versus 332, with Verstappen 40 back on 306 and 5 rounds to go. McLaren's sprint was a mess. Their teammates collided on lap 1, compounding a bruising weekend that tightened everything. Andrea Stella insists the driver's title is still in our hands and says any pecking order comes only when the mathematics demand it. That's the fault line we'll test next. Data, radio, and racecraft, where equal policy meets unequal outcomes. It began with numbers. After Austin, telemetry analysts noticed something odd. Piastri was consistently 3 to 4 kilometers per hour slower through the main straight than Norris, even though both McLarens ran the same aero spec. Onboard footage showed Norris pulling fractions of a car length with every DRS activation. Across 56 laps, that difference added up to nearly 9 seconds of race time, an anomaly too large to ignore. McLaren's explanation? Driving style. According to Stella, Piastri's steering input and throttle modulation created higher drag and energy loss, but independent analysis from several F1 data trackers suggested otherwise. Oscar's inputs were clean. His loss came mainly in power deployment, not corner exit. The suggestion that his MCL38's hybrid recovery mode was less aggressive became the flashpoint. Fans pounced instantly. "They've slowed him down," read dozens of YouTube comments, echoing the same suspicion once aimed at Mark Webber in 2013 when Red Bull favored Vettel. Yet, in modern F1, deliberate engine detuning would show up instantly in FIA telemetry. So if there was bias, it wasn't in raw power. That single stat fueled days of online speculation. Some analysts framed it as energy management strategy divergence. Others, mostly Australian outlets, called it a pattern emerging since Monza. When Austin's data looked suspicious, analysts rewound the tape, all the way back to Monza where the first cracks appeared. That's when Piastri's season-long rhythm began to falter. After a run of podiums, he suddenly lost half a tenth per sector to Norris. Then came Baku, where he clipped the wall twice in one weekend, and Singapore, where the teammates collided in a tight overtake. On paper, these were unrelated incidents. In context, they mapped a slow, steady performance drop that couldn't be dismissed as coincidence. Since Monza, Norris has averaged 0.28 seconds faster per qualifying lap, a gap unseen earlier in the season. Engineers point to confidence in tire prep. Piastri's camp insists setup parity hasn't translated to behavior parity. The Australian has complained privately of rear instability, a phrase that often masks something deeper, a driver losing trust in his machinery. UK pundits argue this is the natural correction of experience, while Australian media call it a quiet shifting of resources. The truth probably sits in the gray zone, the soft bias that never shows up on spreadsheets. One engineer spending an extra hour with one driver, a marginally fresher tire set, a quicker undercut call. It's not sabotage, it's psychology, and it's starting to show. Every title fight eventually meets the spreadsheet. After Austin, McLaren's analysts mapped the final 5 rounds: Mexico, Brazil, Qatar, Las Vegas, and Abu Dhabi, and the numbers told a brutal truth. Unless one driver becomes the clear priority, Verstappen could reclaim the crown through consistency alone. Here's the reality. Piastri, 346 points. Norris, 332. Verstappen, 306. With 180 points still available, 5 Grand Prix plus 2 sprints, McLaren's margin for hesitation is razor thin.
A single DNF or strategy misfire could erase it overnight. Andrea Stella insists both drivers remain free to race. But that phrase, when the mathematics demand it, has become a political grenade. Every time he repeats it, journalists ask what number triggers that decision. Inside the garage, both drivers know the math can shift after one lap. The irony? Piastri's cautious drive in Austin was meant to protect points, yet it widened the gap to Norris. If McLaren delay backing one driver, they risk 2007 déjà vu, when Hamilton and Alonso's internal war handed Kimi Räikkönen the title. That memory haunts McLaren veterans. They know hesitation can be fatal. The next race could force their hand, not because of favoritism, but because the math will make neutrality impossible. Behind the orange garage doors, the mood has changed. Engineers who once shared jokes across setups now whisper in corners, and the once easy rhythm between Piastri's and Norris's crews has hardened into quiet competition. Nothing hostile, not yet, but unmistakably tense. Piastri's side feels cornered. After the sprint crash in Austin, several of his mechanics were reassigned to damage control, while Norris's crew pressed on with fine-tuning long-run pace. That's standard triage in F1, but perception turns procedure into politics. When Oscar returned to the cockpit, his car didn't feel the same. A half-degree here, a torque map there, enough to make a driver doubt the system. On team radio, his frustration leaked through. Short answers, clipped tones. By contrast, Norris's channels were calm, almost rehearsed. McLaren's leadership insists equality, yet cameras caught Stella spending more time on Norris's side of the garage across 3 consecutive weekends. Small details, amplified by pressure. This is how trust erodes in real time. Not through sabotage, but through atmosphere. When you're fighting Verstappen, who operates with Red Bull's total alignment, even whispers of imbalance become dangerous. You can hear it in the radio chatter. Norris sounds light, playful, and certain. A driver in sync with his team. Piastri's voice, once calm and analytical, now carries weight. Clipped acknowledgments, longer silences, a hint of doubt. In F1, that change is as loud as an engine note. This is the mental strain of a title fight. Earlier in the season, Piastri drove with the freedom of a man chasing potential, not points. Now he's defending both, and it shows. Under braking, his telemetry reveals micro-hesitations, tiny lifts that didn't exist in the spring. That's not mechanical, that's psychological. Meanwhile, Norris is thriving on the chaos. Freed from expectation, he's driving like a man with nothing to lose. His adaptability, adjusting lanes mid-corner, managing tires intuitively, has flipped the balance of confidence. In McLaren's war room, they call it momentum drift. Once it starts, it's brutally hard to reverse. Even small gaps feed perception. Sponsors notice, engineers internalize it, and the driver under pressure begins to feel like the underdog inside his own team. While McLaren wrestles with its own reflection, Red Bull has slipped back into championship rhythm. Verstappen doesn't need to dominate anymore. He just needs McLaren to self-destruct. And right now, that's exactly what's happening. Over the past 5 weekends, Verstappen has scored 119 of a possible 133 points. A recovery built on relentless precision. He and Red Bull aren't faster everywhere, but they're flawless where it counts. Every mistake from Woking is another door opening for Milton Keynes. McLaren insiders quietly admit that Verstappen's pressure is influencing decisions. Strategy calls have become conservative. Pit walls second-guess tire offsets just to cover Max. It's classic Red Bull psychology. Control your rivals without saying a word. That delta tells the story. As Red Bull climbs, McLaren's unity crumbles. Norris's recent surge feeds the argument that he's the safer bet. Piastri's frustration feeds the opposite, that the team's already chosen. And in the middle stands Andrea Stella, the quiet engineer turned peacekeeper, trying to avoid another 2007-style implosion while Verstappen sharpens his knife. McLaren has reached the point of no return. 5 races left, tension visible in every glance, every radio call. If they keep letting Piastri and Norris fight freely, Verstappen will simply walk through the chaos. But if they choose one now, they risk shattering the other and perhaps their future harmony. Inside the team, the conversations are getting sharper. Senior engineers are pushing for clarity before Mexico. One driver prioritized for setups, pit calls, and strategy flow. Stella, ever the diplomat, insists both deserve a fair shot. Yet, in private, even he knows the team can't serve two masters in a knife-edge title fight. For Piastri, this is the defining test of his young career. Not just speed, but resilience. He's tasted what pressure does to trust, how quickly belief can fade when the numbers turn. If he can channel that anger into performance, the story changes again. But if Norris outperforms him once more, perception will harden into policy. As the lights go out in Mexico, McLaren must decide: protect the partnership or protect the title. Because in Formula One, loyalty is beautiful until it costs you everything. If you've been following the McLaren Civil War series, don't miss the next episode, Mexico Showdown, when team orders become inevitable.